Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Maurice's Nubian Romance Novels. We have another reading on tonight. We will be reading, coming to you from chapters 13 and 14. So just to catch you up on chapters 11 and 12, remember Dathan tried to prevent Natasha from getting into the church. Most folk are unaware that some of these things that happen to them really are spiritual warfare. And so we know that spiritual warfare is real because we have principalities over every city, every state, every country. And so when we begin to wonder what's going on, those principalities are most likely at work, as we see them being at work in Natasha's life. And so it's important for us to understand when Natasha thought the doors were locked and for an instant she thought God didn't want her in his house. We know that's never ever true. God always wants us. No matter what we do, he already knows we're going to do it. He appreciates when we make the right choice. Nonetheless, we are human, and so we don't always make the right choice. But our saving grace as Christians is that we can go to him and ask for forgiveness. We can go to him in the state of repentance. So that's very important for us to have. And so in this chapter, chapter 13, we are going to start off with Natasha following Joshua home to the home house, to his mother's house, to begin having Sunday dinner. Chapter 13. Natasha followed Joshua almost 20 minutes before they turned off of the highway onto exit 13. As she came to a slow halt at the stop sign, Natasha saw a huge sign directly in front of her that read, "Welcome to Zion." Natasha looked at the trees surrounding the sign. The leaves seemed to be waving to her as they blew gently in the wind. Natasha inhaled deeply, enjoying the smell of the sweet honeysuckle. They turned right and drove almost 2 miles. She looked at the blue and white sky. It was calm. The clouds looked fluffy and light as they floated across the sky. The farm animals were grazing in the plush green grass as she drove by. Her eyes widened as she saw the baby cows suckling while their mothers ate. She smiled as the colts trotted beside their mothers through the field on stick-like legs. They turned left onto King Solomon's Court and traveled a quarter of a mile down the road. Natasha noticed the rows of Queen Anne's corn on one side and apple and peach trees on the other side. She smiled to herself. She felt as she had just driven into a little patch of heaven. It felt so peaceful. For the first time, Natasha realized that the raging war she had been hearing was gone. The feeling of gloom and doom was no longer surrounding and suffocating her. She thanked God as she looked ahead and saw a beautiful 2-story white house with black shutters decorating the windows. She fell in love with the porch, which wrapped around both levels of the home. There was a huge oak tree in the front yard with 2 huge ties for swings hanging from it. Natasha noticed several other cars as she pulled beside Joshua's Jeep, then turned off her engine. She sat for a moment, taking in her surroundings. She saw Mrs. Jones walk onto the porch from the side door, wearing a beautiful floral print dress with a wide apron. She smiled broadly as she waved at them with a dish towel. Joshua opened the car door for Natasha. She unbuckled her seatbelt and let him escort her out of the car. Thank you, Joshua. My goodness, this is so beautiful, she said in awe. Is this your home? Is this where you grew up? Yes, ma'am, it is. I was born and raised right here, but I actually live 2 miles down the road, he said, pointing past the Queen Anne's cornfield. Wow. Joshua chuckled as he guided Natasha toward the house. Good afternoon, Mrs. Jones. Welcome, child. Welcome, she said, embracing her. Oh, I'm so glad you came. When Joshua told me you were coming to dinner, I was so delighted. Come in, baby. Dinner is almost ready. Natasha entered the side door and walked directly into the kitchen. She inhaled deeply. The aromas from the food made her mouth water. She marveled at the side of the country-style kitchen. The stove had 8 burners with an island attached to it that sat in the middle of the floor. She looked up and saw the pots and pans hanging above it. Natasha looked around the kitchen and noticed an African-American picture of Jesus having his Last Supper with the disciples. Natasha looked around and noticed an African-American picture of Jesus having his Last Supper with the disciples. The picture hung on a yellow wall above an oak breakfast table. Natasha was in awe of another oven that sat inside of a brick wall resembling a chimney. She walked over to it and looked inside of the tinted glass window. She saw the apple cobbler juice bubbling through the golden brown crust. Joshua leaned against the oak wood cabinets, crossed his arms, and watched her. To him, Natasha was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Mrs. Jones took the cornbread out of the oven and sat it on the island. As she sectioned it with a knife, she looked at Joshua watching Natasha. Initially, when Mrs. Jones picked up Natasha's chart at the nurse's station, she was stunned to discover that she was the woman that her son Jason had rescued from the car wreck. Furthermore, she found it ironic that Joshua had been assigned by Dr. Noah to be her massage therapist. Mrs. Jones remembered going to Natasha's room and finding her peacefully asleep. For some strange reason, she felt connected to her. It was as if her spirit were reaching out to her. The thought crossed her mind that she could be the daughter that she never had. Mrs. Jones remembered telling herself to get a grip and dismissed the thought from her head. However, as she watched Natasha turn and smile at her son, that same thought resurfaced in her mind. Mrs. Jones took some butter and began spreading it on top of the cornbread as she watched Joshua fidget. She could tell by the tender way he looked at Natasha that he already cared for her. The mere fact that he even brought her home to meet his entire family spoke more than he could have ever said. Therefore, she knew what her son was feeling. She only hoped that Natasha could reciprocate. Natasha turned around and looked at the island. It was full of food. She couldn't believe this was a normal Sunday dinner. To her, this was certainly a meal, a celebration. It looked like a feast. Mrs. Jones had prepared fried chicken, pot roast with potatoes and carrot, a honey-baked decorated ham with pineapples and cherries, cabbage, collard greens, a squash casserole, white rice, chicken and dumplings, fried catfish, deviled eggs, candy yams, potato salad, macaroni and cheese, biscuits, and cornbread. Oh my God, today. Natasha licked her lips when she noticed the lemon meringue pie and the banana pudding. The sight of the delicious foods and desserts made her stomach growl. Joshua and Mrs. Jones laughed. Natasha touched her stomach and laughed with them, slightly embarrassed. It had been months since she had had a home-cooked meal. My goodness, Mrs. Jones, you certainly cooked a lot. I hate to see what you would prepare for our holiday meal. Oh, baby, this is just a little Sunday dinner. Joshua, why don't you take Miss Berry on into the living room and introduce her to the family? Call me Natasha, please, Mrs. Jones. Can I help you do anything, please? No, thank you, baby. I have everything under control. This is my normal, honey. We're going to be eating in a minute. Y'all go on out into the living room now. Y'all go on. Joshua kissed his mother on the cheek, then led the way through the swinging kitchen doors and through the dining room. As Natasha followed him, she noticed that the table was set with wide antique china plates trimmed in gold that were accompanied with shiny silverware arranged in their proper order. She noticed the crystal glasses were trimmed in gold too. As she walked by, she casually ran her hand across the wide linen tablecloth. She admired the freshly cut wildflowers, which adorned the table as a centerpiece. Just as she was about to exit the dining room, she noticed the table was set for 10 people. She wondered just whom all she was about to meet. As they entered the living room, Natasha noticed that everyone's conversation ceased as she came to rest at Joshua's side with a smile. Natasha looked toward the front door when she heard it open and saw Joshua's identical twin brother, Jason, entering with a chew stick in his mouth. Jason looked over at his brother and acknowledged him with a smooth nod of his head. He looked at Natasha and smiled too. She smiled back at him. Natasha noticed a handsome older gentleman coming from out of the hallway. He looked like he could have been Joshua and Jason's father. Well, well, well. Now, what do we have here? Now, I know my nephew didn't go out and find himself a woman. And Lord, did he find one, Uncle Butch said with great enthusiasm. Natasha looked at Uncle Butch and knew he considered himself to be a player. She could tell that Uncle Butch had always been a well-groomed man. His rich brown skin was flawless and had a healthy glow. Natasha imagined it must be as smooth as a baby's body. She admired his manicured mustache, which connected to a well-groomed goatee. She looked at his navy blue cuffed pinstripe tailor pants, which were held up by a pair of navy blue suspenders trimmed with gold. She admired his soft white silk shirt accented with gold cufflinks. She also fell in love with his polished navy blue and white wingtip shoes. As he walked towards her on the shiny hardwood floor, she could hear the taps on the bottom of his shoes clicking as if they were making music, a rhythm all of their own. She looked in his warm, brown, twinkling eyes as he stood before her with a smile so bright it felt like sunshine. Well, hey there, gal. I'm your Uncle Butch. Mm, mm, you's a pretty little thing. Yes, indeed, he said, looking at her from head to toe. Natasha wanted to laugh, but she held it in. She extended her hand. Nah, girl, there's no handshaking here. I want a hug. Don't be stingy. Natasha couldn't help herself. She burst into laughter as she hugged him tightly and kissed him on the cheek. And got good sugar to boot, too. Lord have mercy. Boy, you done found yourself a good one here. How you snagged this? Everyone in the room burst into laughter. Joshua wanted to save Natasha from his uncle, but he could see that she was holding her own. Hey, Uncle Butch, I'm Natasha, she said with a happy smile. Well, I'm mighty glad to meet you, young lady. I done heard a lot about you, he said, standing firmly in front of her. Oh, really? She said, turning around and looking at Joshua. Joshua put his hands in his pocket and looked away. She knew he was slightly embarrassed. Well, I'm sure if it came from Joshua, it was all good. Nothing but the best. Well, now, you come on over here and meet everybody since my nephew's standing there tongue-tied, he said, reaching his arm out. Don't mind him, though. He'll warm up in a minute. We look alike, minding them locks, but he don't act nothing like me, Uncle Butch said, chuckling as he ran his hand over his close haircut. Uncle Butch took Natasha by the hand and introduced her to Joshua's Aunt Mamie, who was a short, dark-skinned, heavy-set woman with smiling, light brown eyes. She looked like his mother, Mary. He introduced her to Aunt Willie Mae, who could pass for white and was tall and thin. She could have easily been a runway model. He guided her toward Uncle Rick, who looked identical to Aunt Willie Mae. Yeah. They twins. It runs in the family. He snickered as he patted Natasha gently on the stomach. You fertile gal? Nah, I'm just kidding. Natasha chuckled. She was completely taken with Uncle Butch's personality. Uncle Butch guided her toward Uncle Sonny, a petite-sized man whose complexion was red. It reminded Natasha of a freshly baked cinnamon roll. Natasha noticed that he was sitting with his legs delicately crossed as he smoothed down his wavy auburn hair. When Uncle Sonny shook her hand, Natasha was taken aback momentarily. She hadn't expected his handshake to be as genteel as a woman's. Before she let go of his hands, she noticed how well manicured his fingernails were and was almost envious of the silkiness of his hands. Yeah. He got just a little bit sugar in his blood, but you know God loves everybody, Uncle Butch whispered as he steered her toward Uncle Boone, who was high yellow and sat with a dull, far-away look in his hazel eyes. Now, this one right here, Boone, he got a few screws loose. He was in the war, you know. So you gotta be careful not to make any sudden moves around him, cause he'll snap like a twig. Yeah, he will. Just don't move too quick. Natasha looked at Uncle Butch with wide eyes. Oh, other than that, he's harmless. You just gotta announce what you fixing to do when he's around. Which, by the way, is all the time. Rick ain't around much, though, so you don't have to worry about trying to impress him. I don't know where he be or what he be doing, but I know he doing something he ain't got no business doing. Oh, and Boone can't hear too good, so you gotta yell. Boone! Boone! Hey, Boone! This here Joshua woman. Joshua put his head down and shook it with disbelief. He couldn't believe his uncle had just called Natasha his woman. He had never been so embarrassed in all his life. Uncle Boone turned his head slowly and looked up at Natasha. "How are you?" he asked slowly as he looked Natasha from her head to her feet. There was a familiar spirit about her, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Fine, thank you, sir. And you?" "Didn't I tell you you got to yell, girl? He ain't hear you. That's why he's still looking at you. Speak louder like I just did. Don't feel like you're yelling at him or nothing." Natasha inhaled deeply. "I said I'm fine. Thank you. How are you?" Oh, I'm doing. So you Joshua's woman, huh?" Natasha didn't know what to say. "Well, I'm glad he finally got one. He's always been a peculiar little fella. Quiet. Unlike his brother, who's always raising Cain," he said, pointing at Jason. "I was about scared he was going to turn out like my little sister over there. Poor thing. And everybody thinks I'm crazy. You got any Korean in you, gal?" Quickly and robustly, Natasha shouted, "No, sir!" Well, I guess that's all I got to say, gal. Nice to meet you. Don't be a stranger." Uncle Boone turned away from Natasha and looked past the dining room where he was looking before. Natasha looked in the same direction, but she didn't see anything except the wall full of family pictures. "Don't pay that looking thing no never mind. He looks in the same spot all the time. And those children outside, them Joshua's first cousins," he said, pointing out the window. "All my sisters had children late in life. Hey, wait a minute. Them two youngins there," he said, pointing at two young boys. "They live down the street. They ain't ours with their little bad behinds. Ain't got a lick of home training, neither one of them. Well, I guess they can eat, 'cause ain't no telling where they trifling mama and trifling daddy at anyway. At least they get one good meal a week up here on Sundays. Anyway, I can't hardly remember or pronounce all my nieces and nephews' names, 'cause my sister gave them all African names. Mary, the only one who had enough sense to name Joshua, and Jason. Now you should recognize this man right here. Jason is the one who pulled you out that car, girl. Gal, I hear tell your car was smashed like a can and burnt to a crisp. Ain't God good, girl?" Natasha embraced Jason tightly. "I never had the opportunity to thank you personally for saving my life," she said, feeling herself swelling inside. "If it hadn't been for you, I would have died in that car." Jason embraced her back. There's nothing to thank me for. I was just doing my job," he said humbly. "No, you did more than your job, Jason. I remember hearing people yelling for you to move away because the gas had started leaking. They were afraid the car was going to catch fire, but you didn't stop. I can still see the expression on your face. You were determined to save me, even if it meant risking your own life. No sooner had you carried me a few feet away, the car blew up and you threw yourself on top of me to protect me." Natasha burst into tears. She couldn't hold them back any longer. Jason hugged her tightly as he fought the urge to cry himself. He swallowed hard. You literally saved my life. There are no words. I can't even say thank you would ever be enough. Nah, Miss Berry, God saved your life. I was just the instrument he used to help. That's all I was. Well, I'm glad he used you, Natasha said, wiping her eyes. I have to be honest, though, and tell you, when I heard that car explode and we fell to the ground, I really thought I was dead, man. When I opened my eyes, I thought I was in heaven, looking up at Jesus. I mean, that handsome face and those locks. In my mind, Jesus got locks. Everyone in the room was laughing hysterically. Jason was laughing so hard he could hardly speak. I didn't know who you were. You just had to have been Jesus. Y'all should have been there to witness that right there. She started screaming, "Oh Lord, I done died. Forgive me, Jesus. Forgive me for everything I've ever done. Please don't send me to hell. I just can't go to hell, Jesus. I ain't done nothing that bad." Jason was laughing so hard he started choking. Uncle Butch pulled the chew stick from his nephew's mouth and patted him firmly on the back as he laughed himself. Whoa, that was funny. It took us forever to calm you down and make you realize that you were not dead or in heaven. But you kept screaming, "But the fire, Jesus, the fire." Girl, the whole department is still talking about you. Natasha was wiping in her tears of laughter. Did you get the flowers I sent you? Yes, ma'am, I did. And thank you. And I received the flowers from your mother, her church, your godmother. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I received flowers from your mother's neighbor's brother, a Mr. Benjamin Walker. I think that's his name. Natasha shook her head yes as she chuckled. Well, they were all grateful, and it was such a small token in comparison to what you did for me. Thank you so much, Jason. No problem, sis. I mean, Miss Berry. Natasha wanted to tell him that sis would do just fine, but she asked him to call her by her name instead. All right, Natasha. My goodness, you and Joshua are identical. You think so? I always thought I was better looking than him. Nonsense. Y'all look exactly like me, and I'm better looking than the both of y'all put together, Uncle Butch said with all sincerity as he pinched the razor-sharp crease in his pants. Joshua, ma'am, he said, walking toward her. Where's the bathroom? I like to freshen up a little bit before dinner. No problem. Follow me. Natasha excused herself and walked down the hallway. As she left, she could hear them talking amongst themselves about how nice and pretty she is. She also heard Uncle Sonny fussing with Uncle Boone about discussing his personal business in front of company. She tried to laugh softly as she heard Uncle Rick defend his brother by telling Sonny it was true and that Natasha could see that he was a homosexual as clearly as the nose on her face. Uncle Rick told Sonny if he didn't like what Boone had said, that he should straighten up and stop bending over. Natasha was no more good. She covered her mouth and ran past Joshua into the nearest room. Joshua came in behind her and laughed too. He tried to apologize for his family between his laughter, but it was no use. She heard Aunt Mamie defend Uncle Sonny by telling Rick to leave him alone. Uncle Butch stepped in and told her that Rick could say whatever he wanted to say, and so could he. Natasha heard Aunt Willie Mae tell all of them to be quiet before Natasha realized that none of them had any sense of home training at all. Then she followed up by asking Butch what he meant by them having children late in life. What was all that about? What you talking about? You can't pronounce your own nieces and nephews' names. Natasha, please forgive my family. They mean well, he said, closing the door. Ah, Joshua, they're real. I like that. I wish I could have grown up in a large family like this. They're fussing at each other, but you can hear the love in it too. Yeah, now that's true. Well, since we're in here, you can use that bathroom. I'll be in the living room when you're done. Thanks. Natasha entered the bathroom and noticed how masculine it looked. The wood was a rich dark-stained oak trimmed with brass. The wallpaper was maroon with razor-thin black lines. The only reason Natasha could tell the lines were black was because of the black accessories in the bathroom, drawing them out. The towels and washcloths were a thick black terry cloth. Beside the toilet was a lined brass waste paper basket, which sat on a platform with lions' piles for support. She looked in the mirror and wished she had asked to come to the bathroom long before now. She opened her pocketbook and freshened her makeup. As she fingered her hair, she heard a resounding laughter that made her laugh too. She could hear them picking at Joshua in a loving way, and it warmed her heart. She relieved herself, washed her hands thoroughly. As she reached for a paper towel which laid in a brass basket on top of the sink, Malik crossed her mind. She shook her head to get rid of the thought. She didn't want to think of anything or anyone except for what was happening right now in this very moment. She was having a perfect day. Natasha never felt more secure in all of her life. She dried her hands and used the lotion beside the paper towels. As she rubbed her hands, she made a mental note to ask Uncle Sonny what he used to make his hands feel so silky. Natasha left the bathroom, then looked around the room. She realized that the bathroom and bedroom both matched. The stained oakwood furniture shined as if it had just been polished. Natasha looked at the bed. For some reason, she wanted to run her hands across the thick maroon and black comforter. She inhaled and exhaled deeply. Natasha noticed the trophies on the wall. Each trophy was sitting on its own little wooden shelf extended from the wall. It was then when she realized she had run into Joshua's room. The trophies ranged from track and field to basketball and football. There was even an award for soccer and hockey. On the opposite wall were plaques of academic achievement. Natasha read each one with great enthusiasm. For each reason, as she read them, she was proud of Joshua. She saw that he was president of the student government in high school and college. He was voted most popular and most likely to succeed. He was also captain of the debate team for 4 consecutive years while he attended college. She saw that he graduated summa cum laude from Howard University with a degree in psychology and a minor in sports medicine and fitness science. She saw that he received the Master's of Divinity from Shaw University. Joshua cleared his throat to let Natasha know that he was entering the room. Immediately, she began to apologize for being curious. He disregarded it. He saw how she smiled with each plaque she read. He was glad they were there to help her learn just a little more about who he was. Joshua, wow, you're very accomplished. I had no idea. There's a lot you don't know about me, Natasha. But hopefully with time, you will. Natasha looked at him and smiled. She hoped she would have the opportunity to learn everything there was to know about him. She looked up at Joshua and for some reason felt compelled to kiss him. She looked at his full, dark lips and wondered what they would feel like on her neck. She scolded herself because she knew she was way ahead of herself. Besides, she had just rededicated herself to the Lord, and here she was having lascivious thoughts, thick, dark, warm lips on the neck. Well, I think we better get back. There's no telling what Uncle Butch will think we're doing over here. You know something? You're right about that, he said, chuckling. Joshua was glad that Natasha had made that suggestion because he wanted to take her in his arms and kiss her wanting lips himself. No sooner had they walked down the hallway than Uncle Butch noticed them. Uh-huh! Mary, here they come, out of his room. What did I tell you? He said, laughing. Oh, boy, be quiet, Mary said, hitting him on the arm. Now, everybody, come on, let's sit down and eat. Joshua pulled the chair out for Natasha and she sat down. She noticed that all of the men seated their sisters. It finally dawned on her that there were no husbands or wives around. Natasha kept that thought to herself. She was going to make sure she asked Joshua about that at a later time. Natasha watched as the children surrounded the dinner table, held hands, then bowed their heads. Joshua took Natasha's hand and held it tightly as he blessed the food. After prayer, the children followed Mary and Mamie into the kitchen so they could prepare their dinner plates. Natasha smiled as each child came out of the kitchen carrying a plate of food. As they passed her, they smiled and giggled as they made their way onto the porch to eat at the table that was set for them. Natasha could tell that they ranged in ages from 6 to about 12 years old. Mary and Mamie came out of the kitchen taking off their aprons. They draped them over their chairs. Jason stood and pulled the head chair out for his mother, while Rick seated Mamie. Thank you, son. All right now, everybody, let's eat. Natasha watched as everyone went for themselves, passing bowls of food around the table. She wanted some of everything, but she knew she couldn't fit it all on her plate. Joshua leaned over and suggested that she make her seconds what she couldn't fit on her plate the first go round. She giggled and told him that was a good idea. So, Natasha, where you from? Aunt Mamie asked as she piled her plate high with macaroni and cheese. Oh, I was born in Ahaza until I was 9 years old. But when my mother's parents died, we moved to Hannafin, where my father's people are from. Oh, Hannafin. Did you know that city was named after a city called Zebulun? Oh, yes, ma'am, I did. That's part of our history. Oh, I see. Did you go to college, baby? You know, education is important. Yes, ma'am. I graduated from Spelman with a degree in accounting. So you graduated from Spelman? Well, Boone and I graduated from Tuskegee. I know I don't sound like it, but you know I do know how to speak proper English. It just takes me a little bit of effort, you know. I just like being more comfortable and laid back, if you know what I mean. Yes, sir. I understand exactly what you mean, Uncle Butch. So, Natasha, are you a certified public accountant? Aunt Willie Mae asked. Yes, ma'am. I am a CPA. Oh, good. Now I can get my taxes done for free, Uncle Butch said, pulling the bone out of his catfish. Mary, sister, dear, you cooked this fish right here, girl. This is something good. Butch, you say that every Sunday. Every Sunday, Uncle Sonny said, delicately eating his chicken leg with a knife and fork. Uncle Butch looked at him eating and was about to comment, but Mary cut him off. Hold your tongue, Butch. We got company. What's wrong with you? Boy, you lucky. You lucky because I was fixing a light into you. Natasha coughed inside of her white linen napkin to hide her laughter. She didn't dare look at Joshua for fear. She would literally burst into laughter. So, you say you from Hannaford. I know a few folk down there. You know the McPhersons and the Loves? Oh, goodness, yes. Anyone just passing through Hannaford should know them. The McPhersons own every utility company in 3 counties along with the trains and bus systems. And the Loves own every bank almost 50 miles in either direction. You know, it's really strange about them because the McPhersons keep their money in the Loves banks and the Loves provide the maintenance on the trains and the buses. I don't understand any of it when they're supposed to be rivalries. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You know, you're right about that. I hear tell that feud started over some land. That's what they say, Uncle Butch, but the story keeps changing. I mean, I don't know. I just think it's been going on for so long, they've forgotten what the real reason was anyway. All they know is that they're not supposed to lie to one another at this point. But you know, several of their sons and daughters have married into one another's family. Between them all, they have enough land and money to make their own little town. Are you for real, Mary asked? Yes, ma'am. Those 2 families own just about every piece of land with the exception of the land my parents owned. And they tried to buy that too. Is your mother still in Hannaford? Butch asked. No, sir. She lives in Eden now. Mama always wanted to live there ever since she was a little girl. They had a family reunion there once and she fell in love with it. When my father died about 5 years ago, she went to Eden, bought herself some property, and built a home. She built a few houses on the property we have back at home, too, and she rents them out for income. So, y'all rich, huh? No, Uncle Butch. My mother reminds me often that she's the one who's well off. She reminds me often that I should always keep a job and not buy anything I cannot afford to pay for. They all laugh. I hear that. So, your mama looking for a friend, gal? Butch! Well, Mary, ain't no harm in asking. Shoot, the girl had to get her good looks from somewhere. I suspect it's from her mama. Natasha laughed heartily. I don't know, Uncle Butch. I'll be sure and ask. She stays in church most of the time. In church, huh? She ain't got no man. Can she cook? Cause I can't be having no woman that can't cook. Uncle Sonny looked at him and frowned. What in the world would make you think her mother would want to be bothered with you, Butch? I'm sure she's an upright, decent Christian woman. All right now, Mr. He, She, don't get me started. Now, I wasn't talking to you, Butch said, shaking his index finger at Sonny as he held the biscuit between his fingers. Oh, no, he didn't, Natasha screamed to herself as she looked from one to the other. And why wouldn't she want a handsome man like me? Huh? Look at me. Natasha, you call your mama and you tell her all about your Uncle Butch. You hear me, gal? Yes, sir. I'll tell her about your Uncle Butch. You do that now. As Natasha ate, she looked around the table. Butch and Sonny were still cracking on one another while Mamie deboned a piece of fish for one of the children. Natasha watched her place the fish on the child's plate along with a slice of white bread. She watched Jason lean over and gently wipe Uncle Boone's chin as he finished his glass of freshly brewed iced tea. She watched Uncle Boone wink his eye at Jason as he refilled his glass. Natasha wished she had grown up like this instead of being reared as an only child. Though she had two parents, there was rarely any discussion in her home at all. It was as if her mother could only laugh and talk when her father wasn't at home. Natasha never understood why. However, when she watched television, the families were always gathered at the dinner table, passing bowls of food from one to the other while they had interesting conversation. She wished her family emulated television life. She vowed that when she married and had children, her table would have just as much activity. Now, here she was, living out her secret childhood desires that hadn't crossed her mind since she discovered the realities of the world. Here she was, being a part of the fullness at the table. And yes, it was good. Chapter 14. Our final chapter for the evening. After dinner, Natasha helped clear the table. She offered to help with washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen too. But Mary wasn't having any of it. She ordered Natasha from her kitchen and told her to go and join Joshua out on the porch. Natasha embraced Mrs. Jones, left the kitchen, and went to find Joshua. Sure enough, there he was, sitting on the porch swing, rocking slowly, looking past the rows of peach and apple trees. Natasha opened the screen door slowly, as not to interrupt his concentration. Joshua looked in her direction as the door screeched. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you." "Nonsense. Come, have a seat," he said, patting the floral thick cushion. Joshua raised his arm and let it rest on the back of the swing. Natasha walked over to him and sat down beside him. Though the swing was large enough to seat 4 people, she sat inches away from him. Natasha and Joshua sat in silence as they watched the children playing. The girls were attempting to jump double dutch. She wanted to jump desperately, wanted to join them. It had been a long time since she had jumped rope. "Joshua, you think they would mind if I got a jump?" "I doubt it, especially not if you'll turn afterward," he said, chuckling. "Well, that ain't no problem." Natasha joined the girls and asked if she could have a jump. She offered to turn afterward, and they hopped on her alpha. Natasha made several attempts but was unsuccessful. Butch came to the screen door and looked outside because he heard the children laughing hysterically. "Would you look at this? Now, ain't this about a sight? Would y'all come over here and look at this gal trying to jump rope?" he said, laughing. "You ain't never gonna get no jump in with them two turning, Natasha. One's too short and the other one is double-handed." Mamie, Willie Mae, Rick, and Sonny looked over Butch's shoulder. "Move, boy," Willie Mae commanded. "Wait a minute, Tasha, we coming. She giggled like a schoolgirl as she went swiftly down the porch stairs. Mamie was at her heels. "Y'all move on out the way so Natasha can get a good jump. Go on now, go on." The children protested, but they moved. They stood back and watched their mothers even out the wild rope. They watched as Aunt Mamie slipped the rope around her waist and began bouncing with the rhythm of the rope. Excuse me. "Now, y'all watch how it's supposed to be done. Go ahead, Natasha." Natasha moved back and forth, getting in line with the rope. She leaped inside and jumped. Joshua rose to his feet as he saw her turning around and touching the ground. Mary and Jason came from the side of the house and watched with smiles. Joshua looked at her figure as she pulled her dress tightly against her body to keep it from hitting the rope. He could see her full buttocks and healthy thighs. He shook his head as he watched her behind bounce with the rhythm as she jumped. Unconsciously, he rubbed his stomach and licked his lips as if he were hungry. Have mercy, he thought. He said to himself. I hear that, nephew, Uncle Butch said, smiling at Joshua. Limber little thing, ain't she? Uncle Butch, don't you go there, Joshua said, laughing. What? I'm just saying, the woman is limber. Well, she is. Look at her, he said, pointing at Natasha. Move back, Natasha, Mary shouted. Oh my goodness. Boom! Boom! Gracious, he gonna miss this right here if I don't go get him. Hold on, Mary. I'ma go get Boom so he can laugh too. Mary sucked her teeth and waved Butch's comments away. Butch ran into the house to get his brother. He knew Boom would certainly appreciate the sight of his sister jumping double dutch. Go ahead, sister, Mamie shouted as Mary jumped in and crossed her arms over her full breast to keep them from bouncing. Natasha turned around and smiled at Mary, who was keeping good pace with her. Lord have mercy. Would you look at that, Uncle Boom said, shaking his head as he walked onto the porch. Joshua turned around and looked because his uncle was laughing. It was rare that anything moved him. He could probably count the number of times he had ever heard his uncle laugh on one hand. As a child, Joshua remembered Uncle Boom telling him that the war was too much for Butch, who was a fighter pilot. Boone had volunteered to join the armed forces because he always wanted to fly airplanes. He had hopes of joining the Tuskegee Airmen, the first Black African-American fighter pilots, because their reputation was beyond reproach. They were also high academic achievers because the majority of the men held degrees in an array of studies. Butch had his bachelor's degree in math and physics and was also the captain of the 3rd Squadron, while Boone held a degree in chemical engineering. Boone had been flying for 2 years before the Tuskegee Airmen drafted them both. Boone's dream was finally about to come true. He had received his promotion along with 2 other pilots. They were flown to Seoul, Korea to await their arrival of the Tuskegee Airmen to join them. Boone had never been happier in his life. He was about to become a part of a prestigious team, and he was going to be reunited with his brother. Boone and Butch hadn't seen one another in almost a year. Though they were both fighter pilots, their missions kept them separate. They waited patiently in a little hut, talking about the war and their aircrafts. Finally, Boone heard a familiar voice call his name. He turned around and saw his big brother standing with a smile. Butch was wearing a deep tan leather jacket with lamb's wool gracing the collar and cuffs. Beside him stood other Tuskegee Airmen, all standing tall and proud. Boone raced to his brother and they embraced. Butch introduced Boone to his friends and congratulated him on his flying. That night, they partied hard. When they finished their victorious celebration, they were meeting the rising sun. They left the little hut and started walking to their barracks to rest for their flight home. Suddenly, shots were fired and the men dove for cover. They couldn't see where the shots were coming from. Butch realized that they were under sniper attack. He focused his eyes like radar, searching the tops of the trees and roofs of houses. He spotted the orange and red flare coming from an abandoned barn as the sniper fired again. Butch signaled to one of the soldiers that he had spotted the sniper. He realized the soldier had frozen. Butch crawled on his belly toward the soldier, took the rifle out of his back, and forced him to lie down. He waited patiently for the sniper to start firing again. There was his chance. Butch aimed with precision and shot the sniper. They all watched the body fall from the barn onto the ground. No one moved. Suddenly, they heard children screaming. Boone looked up and saw children coming from every direction with bombs strapped around their little bodies. Boone had never experienced anything like this before. He was a pilot. Pilots didn't have to confront the enemy hand to hand. They did their damage from the air, shooting at other planes or dropping bombs. Boone's mind could not comprehend what he was seeing. For certain, these couldn't be children. How was he supposed to shoot a child? Butch yelled for Boone to shoot them in the head, but his finger would not pull the trigger. Butch and the other men began shooting the children. Boone watched them drop before him, one by one. It was as if each part of him died with every child that was killed before his eyes. Boone came back to reality when he heard Butch calling for someone to toss him a clip because he was out of ammunition. It wasn't until then that Boone rose to his feet and without thought aimed at their little heads and shot the remainder of the children in order to save his brother and the other pilots with them. After it was over, there were 15 children dead. None of the airmen had lost their lives or had been injured. Even the sniper had been a child. Though Boone received accolades and honors for his heroic actions, he was now dead inside. His dreams had finally come true, though. He was a Tuskegee Airman, but he no longer flew with zeal. Instead, it was mechanical. Now he thought about the people he dropped bombs on, whereas he never thought about who the bombs were hitting before. They were simply the enemy. He wondered just how many children died with every bomb he dropped. Butch knew that experience was more than his brother could bear. Unbeknown to Boone, Butch went to their commanding officer and requested that his brother be given an honorable discharge. The commanding officer knew Butch was right. He could look at him and knew he was not the same after that experience. Boone was sent home. He left Zion, a healthy young man with ambitions of becoming a pilot, and returned home mentally incapacitated. Uncle Butch, on the other hand, returned with a new lease on life and lived his life to the fullest. As Joshua looked at the smile on his uncle's face, he knew that Uncle Butch was right. This was doing him a lot of good. Joshua turned his attention back to Butch, who was whispering in Sonny's ear. He laughed to himself. He knew his Uncle Butch was up to something. "Hey, psst, psst, Mr. Sunshine," Butch said, sliding behind his brother and whispering in his ear. "I'm about sick of you today, Boone." "Butch," Sonny snapped. "Look, boy, you know I'm just playing with you." "I don't want to hear anything you have to say," Sonny said, tapping his foot to the rhythm of the rope. "Come on now, be nice. Look, why don't you do your brother a favor and let him watch you skip rope?" Butch said, trying not to laugh. "Get away from me, Butch. You're even crazier than Boone." "No, now I'm serious. Now be nice. You know you want to go on over there and skip rope anyway. I see your foot a tapping. Go on, Sonny. Go on now and do something nice for your brother. Go on. When the last time you seen him laugh?" Sonny turned around and saw the tears of laughter rolling down his brother's face. The rare smile alone was enough to fill his heart and make him consent. "Move up, Mary. I'm coming in," Sonny called as he hopped down the stairs. Lord have mercy, that boy done give sugar a new name. Would you look at that? Butch said, shaking his head as he watched Sonny twitch as he walked. Mary moved towards Natasha. Natasha moved back. Sonny jumped in and everyone cheered as the three of them jumped double dutch in unison. Sonny felt good as he looked toward the porch and saw Boone laughing hysterically. It prompted him to start performing for his brother's benefit. He sucked in his jaws, pinched his lips tightly together, held his head high, and jumped as prissy as any girl could. Boone burst into laughter, grabbing at his stomach, and began banging on the porch banister. Jason ran in the house and grabbed the camera. He ran back out and began taking pictures. That was all Sonny needed. Seeing the flashbulb go off was his cue to perform even the more. Natasha jumped out because she was out of breath. Mary jumped out breathing heavily too. Mamie and Willie Mae turned the rope faster as they laughed, but Sonny kept in time. The faster they turned, the faster he jumped. Sonny jumped as if he was striking a pose every time his feet touched the ground. The children screamed with laughter and began emulating his movement. Uncle Butch almost had a heart attack as he saw his youngest nephew imitating Sonny all too well. Uncle Butch screamed for his nephew to stop, but it was too late. Before anyone knew it, he had jumped in with his Uncle Sonny, and together they jumped double dutch together. Willie Mae yelled that her arms was getting tired. Natasha skillfully slid behind her and took over turning without missing a beat. The afternoon was filled with laughter as everyone took turns jumping and turning double dutch. Even Uncle Butch took a stab at it until his knees buckled and he fell to the ground. The children laughed hysterically as Rick tried to help him up. Mary, Mamie, and Willie Mae ran inside of the house holding themselves, each running for a bathroom. "Move! I'm okay! Move!" Natasha had dropped to the ground because she was laughing so hard it had made her weep. Sonny had taken the camera away from Jason and took as many pictures as he could of Butch struggling to his feet. He wanted to keep those pictures for posterity. Natasha looked up and saw Boone, Joshua, and Jason holding one another up as they laughed uncontrollably on the porch. Boy, if you don't get that camera out of my face, move on. Natasha rose from the ground and aided Rick with helping Uncle Butch to his feet. When Butch rose, he swatted at the children as he chased them for laughing at him. Natasha looked at him and saw he was laughing too. She watched the older children slow down so he could catch them. Butch gave each of them a loving swat on the backside. They indulged him by trying to get away from him as they screamed, telling him to stop because it hurt. Natasha looked up at the sky and thanked God for allowing her to be a part of what was going on here. Without her knowledge, Joshua saw her and his heart went out to her. It made him wonder what her childhood could have been like. It also made him grateful for the experience Natasha was thanking God for was a part of his everyday life. He didn't know anything except this experience. After Uncle Butch finished chasing his nieces and nephews, he walked toward Natasha and swatted her gently too. Natasha embraced him tightly and kissed him on the cheek. Uncle Butch wrapped his arm around her waist and together they walked onto the porch. He slapped Joshua 5 on the sly as he passed, letting him know that he definitely approved of Natasha. Joshua was concerned momentarily because he knew his family could be intimidating. However, he was proud that Natasha was able to hold her own with each of them. He particularly loved the way she embraced Sonny by asking if she could use some of his lotion when they finished washing their hands after dinner. Sonny was happy as he could be to share his secret mixtures of lotions with her. Natasha was like a sponge, soaking it all up. Yes, he was proud of the way his family had embraced her wholeheartedly. He looked toward the sky, smiled, and thanked God for his family and for allowing him to meet Natasha. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of chapters 13 and 14. Tomorrow, I will be back to read chapters 15 and 16. I just wanted to say, y'all, you know I can't hardly see. That's why I be stumbling. But you know, I'm trying to be cute. So, you know, I'm squinting. I can't see. But I need to see because I see some people on here I had not seen before. Hey, sis. Hey, Cole Jones. Tiana! Hey, baby. Hey, Shaka Boom Boom. Oh, Carolyn. Hey, thank you so much for coming. And of course, my critiquer, my niece, Nubia. Thank you so much for coming, y'all. You don't know how much I really, really appreciate you showing up for me every week. And I would like for you to follow me and to share Nubian romance novels, the videos. And thank you so much. You didn't have to come as normal, but you did anyway. That's from my shepherd spiritual mother. And so I just want to thank you all so much. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Don't forget, we are coming up on Team Joshua, Team Malik, Team Natasha, Team Keisha, Team Tracy, and Keisha, Team Keisha. So we're going to see who you identify with. So on tomorrow, we're going to take this dinner, the day in heaven, patch of heaven. We're going to take that out so you can learn more about what took place there and see what Mr. Malik is wondering about. And so, again, thank you for coming. You are always so welcome. And I don't take it lightly that any of you spend your time to come and listen to me read. Stay safe. Don't take any chances with your lives. We have a lot of first responders. My niece, Nubia, for one, is a first responder. So I would like that we not only keep her in prayer, but also all first responders in prayer, because they don't have to be out there on the line. So the least we can do is practice precaution and making sure they stay safe as well. But we know prayer is a covering. So we pray for that. Make sure you're washing your hands and maintaining social distances. Don't take risks with your families or with your own lives. I thank you immensely for coming. I look forward to seeing you all on tomorrow. Peace.